I leave off? Oh yeah, sodomy. These are the top 5 things you need to know about Carl Panzram, part 2. Number 3, escape from Oregon. So at the end of part 1, Carl had just escaped the Oregon State Penitentiary after suffering great abuse from the warden. He hopped the rails down the Columbia River, stealing and sodomizing little boys and burning down churches. Like you do. Again, he justified these crimes by saying the world is this shithole and I'm going to go through the world and wreak havoc in it. Do you see what I mean when I say it's hard not to love this guy? He's kind of like a mixture of the Joker and Billy the Kid. But then you remember that he kills and sodomizes little boys, and then you go, no, I don't love this guy. Billy the Kid was actually a pretty upstanding person besides all the murder. Not long after escaping the Oregon State Penitentiary in 1918, Carl Panzram would go on to commit his first murders. How insane is it that he's done all this horrible, horrible business, but has yet to kill one person? Somewhere along the way, Carl decided to break into Howard Taft's house and steal his gun. Now, if you'll remember from part 1, former President Howard Taft is the man who approved Carl's sentence at the military prison. Remember this, it'll be important in part 2. Remember it! So for Carl, this was simply a got him moment, and he fulfilled that moment with a vengeance.
Got him! Got him!
Carl could get guns, that wasn't the point. The point was he wanted to commit unforgivable crimes with the former president's gun. After stealing Taft's gun, he went on to New York and hired sailors to work on his yacht that he bought with all of the blood money. After he got the sailors to the boat, he lulled them to sleep with alcohol and shot all 10 of them in the head. The fact that he went from having never murdered anyone to shooting 10 people, employees no less, in the head in cold blood should tell you a lot about how the penal system worked back then. Corporal punishment stole the humanity from Carl Panzram, and he was on a mission to steal the humanity from everyone else. Number 2, world tour. After the murders, Carl stowed away on a ship headed for Angola around 1920 to work as a merchant seaman. After arriving in Libido Bay, very cool name, he hired about 6 or so local guides to help him go crocodile hunting, which is not a thing anyone should ever do. But Carl don't care about no crocs. As the canoe went down the river, Carl shot all 6 guides in the head, stole their goods, and fed their corpses to the crocodiles. Sometime after that, he sought out a young boy to help him in his travels. In the 1900s traveler community, this was considered a yegg. Basically, a yegg is a man who enlists a young boy, usually a runaway, to help him in his looting and stealing and burning. Unfortunately, more times than not, this young boy would be terribly sodomized and passed along to the other yeggs. But Carl is no normal yegg. He's no normal anything. He would find these boys, use them for manual labor, then rape and kill them because he didn't need any excess luggage. So Carl inevitably killed this young boy and traveled around the world on his yacht, bought with blood money with his gun stolen from a very recent former president. I'm telling you, if he just stopped at this Robin Hood vigilante stuff, this would be an anti-hero story I could get behind. But he did not stop there, as we've seen. Unfortunately, Carl famously said, "Another lesson I learned at that time is that there are a lot of very nice things in this world, among them whiskey and sodomy." So needless to say, this is not a man anyone should be rooting for. What's so funny about this world tour that Carl took is that the US knew he was doing it. The US government told Carl to please just stay overseas and they wouldn't pursue him. Essentially, they were like, oh, your problem now, Queenie, you take him. He's a handful. Number 1, arrest. After a full year of committing the worst crimes a person can commit, Carl stowed away on a ship to Lisbon, but then got word that he was wanted for his crimes in Africa. So he jumped that ship and boarded another ship to the US, which is the boldest of bold moves. America, as a whole, was like, you win, just stay away, please don't come back and terrorize us. And he was like, oh honey, I don't care. See you in 20 days. After killing a few more people, the law finally caught up to Carl in 1928 and he was arrested in Washington. Because he's Carl and Carl's got a Carl, he tried to escape that prison almost immediately. He was caught, suspended by a beam, and beaten unconscious. That's when Henry Lesser, a 26-year-old prison guard, took pity on old Carl. After the beating, he gave Carl $1 for cigarettes and food, later saying no one had ever been kind to him in his life. Carl was sweet on Henry, not in a yeg way, and started to open up to him about his life. After months of hearing these horrible and graphic details, Henry snuck Carl a pencil and paper to write down his story. Tragically, they took Carl away from his buddy and sentenced him to 25 years in a federal prison in Kansas. There, he crushed laundry foreman Robert Warnke's skull with an iron bar. This landed him a spot on death row, and he refused people's efforts to save him from execution. In 1930, Carl Panzram was executed. In the documentary Carl Panzram, The Spirit of Hatred and Vengeance, director John Borowski says that after years of abuse and torment, it was his form of suicide. His last words were, "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around." Man, he's bad to the bone. Get it? 'Cause he's bones now? Henry Lesser was one of the only people to ever get through to Carl, and we have him to thank for Carl's story. Most of what we know comes directly from Carl himself in his autobiography. As opposed to most other killer-written manifestos, Carl's autobiography is exaggeration-free. All the claims he made in his autobiography were cross-checked by both criminal and police records, as well as a huge catalog of newspaper clippings and headlines that support his claims. One inch of goodness we can get from this story is what it can teach us about penal and corporal punishment. Carl was a monster, yes, but before that, he was a human. The monster in him was systematically created, and as somebody who has worked closely with inmates in both federal and state prisons, this is an issue I hold dear to my heart. His autobiography serves a lesson, one that is still relevant today amid reports of inmate abuse at Rikers Island and other prisons. Borowski said Panzram tried to teach our future generations not to create more monsters like him. And above anybody else, Panzram should be listened to. Oh wow, oh geez, we really did it, y'all. This concludes my first serial killer anthology. Was that fun? Should we do it again? Let me know in the comments what you want me to deep dive into. Let's get weird, y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching this anthology. I had such a good time looking into these guys. Don't forget to subscribe to Snarled, but also don't forget to subscribe to Slaytrix if you're into gaming, even if you're not. I wanna see you there. I like people. I need company.